The lawyer's office felt cold as ice when I walked in that Tuesday morning. My two sons, Marcus and Terrell, sat there with their wives like they owned the world. They looked at me with those smug faces I had seen too much of lately. The same faces they wore when they pushed me away from my own husband's casket just 1 week before. "Excuse me, Mrs. Washington," said Marcus, my older son. His wife Destiny sat next to him, her arms crossed tight. "This meeting is only for the heirs named in Dad's will." Terrell nodded along like a puppet. His wife Aaliyah gave me a fake smile that made my stomach turn. "Yeah, Mom. Maybe you should wait outside until we're done." I stood there in my black dress, the same one I wore to bury my husband of 35 years. The same dress I wore when these two boys of mine wouldn't even let me touch Harold's hand one last time before they closed the casket forever. The lawyer, Mr. Davidson, looked uncomfortable. He kept shuffling papers on his desk. "Well, Mrs. Washington, perhaps we should—" "No need to explain anything to her," Marcus cut him off. "Dad made his wishes very clear. The meeting is for family only." Family only. Those words hit me like a slap across the face. I had given birth to these boys. I had raised them when Harold worked double shifts at the factory. I had nursed them through chicken pox and helped them with homework every single night. I had been there for every birthday, every graduation, every moment that mattered. And now I wasn't family, but I didn't say any of that. Instead, I reached into my purse and pulled out a manila folder. It was thick, filled with papers I had spent the last week organizing. Papers that would change everything. I walked over to Mr. Davidson's desk and placed the folder right in front of him. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They had been shaking all week, ever since the funeral. But now they were steady as rocks. "What's this?" Mr. Davidson asked, looking down at the folder. "Just some documents you might need," I said quietly, "for the will reading." Marcus rolled his eyes. "Mom, whatever game you're playing, we don't have time for it. Mr. Davidson, can we please get started?" But Mr. Davidson was already opening the folder. His eyes went wide as he read the first page. Then his face went pale, almost as white as the paper in his hands. "Oh my," he whispered. "Oh my goodness." "What is it?" Destiny asked, leaning forward in her chair. Mr. Davidson looked up at Marcus and Terrell. Both of my sons were staring at him now, waiting for an answer. Their wives were looking nervous too. "Gentlemen," Mr. Davidson said slowly, "it appears your father executed a new will just 3 days before he passed away." The room went so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Marcus's mouth fell open. Terrell's eyes went wide as dinner plates. Their wives looked like they had just seen a ghost. "That's impossible," Marcus said, his voice cracking. "Dad was too sick to sign anything. He was barely conscious those last few days." But I knew better. Harold had been sick, yes, but his mind was sharp right up until the end. Sharp enough to see how his sons had been treating me. Sharp enough to notice how they whispered in corners about money and inheritance. Sharp enough to make one final decision that would teach them about respect and family. Mr. Davidson was reading through more pages now, his frown getting deeper with every line. "This new will is properly signed and witnessed," he said. "It supersedes the previous will entirely." "But what does it say?" Aaliyah asked, her voice high and scared. Mr. Davidson looked at me, then back at my sons. Perhaps we should have Mrs. Washington sit down for this conversation. No, Terrell said quickly. She doesn't need to be here. Just tell us what our father left us. That's when Mr. Davidson said the words that made my heart sing for the first time in weeks. Actually, gentlemen, according to this new will, your father left everything to your mother. The house, the life insurance, the savings accounts, the investment portfolio. Everything goes to Helen Washington. The silence in that room was deafening. Marcus looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. Terrell's face turned red as a tomato. Their wives just stared with their mouths hanging open. That can't be right, Marcus whispered. Check again. But Mr. Baker Davidson was already reading the next page. There's more, he said. Your father left detailed instructions about why he changed his will. He cleared his throat and began to read Harold's words out loud. Words my husband had written just 3 days before he died, after watching his sons push their mother around like she didn't matter. To my sons Marcus and Terrell, Mr. Davidson read, I have watched with great sadness as you have treated your mother with disrespect and cruelty during my illness. A man who cannot honor his mother is not a man who deserves an inheritance. The lawyer kept reading, but I could barely hear him over the sound of my own heart beating. This was it. This was the moment Harold had planned for, the moment when our boys would finally understand what they had lost. But as I looked at their faces, I realized something that made my blood run cold. They weren't ashamed, they weren't sorry, they were angry, and that anger was about to turn into something much worse. But before I continue, drop a comment below and let us know where in the world you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories reach. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to help us reach that big 1,000 subscriber milestone. We're so close, and every single subscriber counts. It's completely free for you, but it means everything to this channel. Also, on the final screen, I've left a video and a playlist that I promise will surprise you. Seriously, don't miss them. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. Now go ahead and hit that subscribe button to be part of the journey. Marcus slammed his hand on the lawyer's desk so hard that the coffee cup jumped. This is fraud, he yelled. That's not my father's signature. Terrell was right behind him, pointing his finger at me like I was some kind of criminal. She forced him to sign it. Dad was on all those pain medications. He didn't know what he was doing. Their wives were crying now, but not the sad kind of crying. It was the angry kind, the kind that comes when someone takes away something you thought was yours. Destiny kept shaking her head and saying, "This isn't fair," over and over again. Aaliyah was already on her phone, probably calling someone to complain. But I just sat there, calm as could be, because I knew something they didn't know yet. Something that would make this whole situation even more shocking. Mr. Davidson held up his hand to quiet everyone down. Please, let me finish reading the will. There are more instructions from your father. We don't want to hear any more lies, Marcus shouted, but Mr. Davidson kept reading anyway. I have also observed, the lawyer continued, how my sons prevented their mother from saying goodbye to me at my own funeral. This final act of cruelty has convinced me that they are not the men I raised them to be. Now Terrell was standing up too, his face getting redder by the second. That's not what happened. We were protecting the funeral from getting too emotional. Mom was crying so loud she was disturbing everyone. I almost laughed at that lie. The truth was, they had hired security guards to keep me away from Harold's casket. They told everyone I was too hysterical to be near the body. But really, they just wanted to control everything, even my last moments with my husband. "There's one more thing," Mr. Davidson said, looking nervous. "Your father left specific instructions about what should happen if anyone contests this will." Marcus and Terrell looked at each other. I could see the wheels turning in their heads. They were already planning to fight this in court. "If either of my sons attempts to contest this will," Mr. Davidson read, "they will immediately forfeit any claim to the family business, Washington Auto Repair, which will instead be sold and the proceeds donated to charity." That's when both my sons went completely silent. The family business was worth almost $2 million. Harold had built it from nothing, starting with just one garage and growing it into 5 locations across the city. The boys had been working there since they were teenagers, and they always assumed they would inherit it together. But here's what they didn't know yet. Here's the secret that would change everything. The business was never in Harold's name to begin with. "Mr. Davidson," I said quietly, speaking for the first time since handing over the folder, "I think you should also read the business ownership documents I included." The lawyer flipped through more pages and found what I was talking about. As he read, his eyebrows went up higher and higher. "Oh my," he said again. "It says here that Washington Auto Repair has been solely owned by Helen Washington since 1995. Marcus grabbed the edge of the desk. "What are you talking about?" "According to these documents," Mr. Davidson explained, "your mother has been the legal owner of the business for almost 30 years. Your father transferred ownership to her when they were having some financial difficulties. To protect the business from creditors." Terrell's voice came out like a whisper. "But Dad always said the business would be ours someday." "Your father managed the business," I said, finally speaking up. "But I owned it. I've owned it this whole time." The truth was, Harold and I had made that decision together back in the 90s. The business was struggling, and we owed a lot of money to suppliers. By putting everything in my name, we could protect it from being taken away. Harold kept running things day to day, but legally, it was always mine. And now, my sons were learning that all their plans, all their dreams of inheriting a multi-million-dollar business, were based on something that was never going to happen anyway. Destiny started crying harder. "This isn't right. You can't just take everything away from your own children." "I'm not taking anything away," I said calmly. "I'm just keeping what was already mine." But Marcus wasn't done fighting yet. He stood up and pointed his finger at me again. "Fine, Mom. You want to play games? We'll play games. But don't expect us to ever speak to you again. Don't expect us to take care of you when you get old and sick. And don't expect to ever see your grandchildren again," Terrell added. "Jasmine and Trevor will never know their grandmother exists." Those words hit me harder than anything else they had said. My grandchildren were only 6 and 8 years old. Sweet little Jasmine with her bright smile and curious questions. Little Trevor who loved to help me bake cookies and always asked for extra chocolate chips. But I had expected this threat. I had known that my boys would try to use their children as weapons against me. That's why I had prepared one more surprise. Actually, I said, reaching into my purse again, there's something else you should know about the grandchildren. I pulled out another folder, this one smaller but just as important. Inside were legal documents I had filed just that morning before coming to the lawyer's office. "What now?" Marcus asked, but his voice wasn't angry anymore. It sounded scared. I handed the folder to Mr. Davidson. He opened it and read the first page, then looked up at me with surprise. "Mrs. Washington has filed for grandparents' rights," he announced to the room. "According to these papers, she's requesting court-ordered visitation with her grandchildren." Both my sons went pale. In our state, grandparents could ask a judge for the right to see their grandchildren, even if the parents didn't want it. And I had a very good case, since I had been a big part of those kids' lives for years. "You can't do that," Aaliyah whispered. "They're our children." "And they're my grandchildren," I said firmly. "I've been there for every birthday, every Christmas, every scraped knee and bad dream. You can try to keep me away, but the law says I have rights too." Terrell slumped back into his chair like all the fight had gone out of him. "Why are you doing this to us, Mom? We're your sons." For the first time that day, I felt my voice shake a little, because despite everything they had done, despite all the pain they had caused me, I still loved these boys. They were my babies once, and part of me would always remember the sweet children they used to be. "I'm doing this," I said quietly, "because you forgot how to love. You forgot that family means more than money. You forgot that your mother deserves respect, not just when it's convenient for you." The room went quiet again. Mr. Davidson was organizing all the papers, clearly ready for this meeting to be over. Marcus and Terrell were staring at the floor, probably trying to figure out their next move. But I wasn't done yet, because there was one more secret I hadn't told them. One more surprise that would either bring us back together as a family or tear us apart forever. And they were about to find out what it was. The silence in that lawyer's office stretched on like forever. Marcus was staring at his hands, and Terrell kept shaking his head like he couldn't believe what was happening. Their wives had stopped crying and were just sitting there looking shocked. Finally, Marcus looked up at me with eyes that reminded me of the little boy he used to be. "Mom," he said quietly, "what do you want from us?" That was the question I had been waiting for, the question that would let me reveal the biggest secret of all. "I want you to understand something," I said, standing up slowly. "Your father didn't change his will to punish you. He changed it to teach you." I walked over to Mr. Davidson's desk and pulled out one more document from the folder. This one was different from all the others. It was handwritten in Harold's careful script, and it was dated just 2 days before he died. "There's a letter," I said, handing it to the lawyer. "Harold wrote it for his sons. He made me promise to only read it if they learned to show respect and kindness." Mr. Davidson took the letter and looked at me. "Should I read it now?" I looked at Marcus and Terrell. They were both watching me with something I hadn't seen in their faces for months. Hope. "That depends," I said to my sons. "Are you ready to listen? Really listen?" Marcus nodded first, then Terrell. Even their wives were leaning forward, waiting to hear what Harold had written. Mr. Davidson unfolded the letter and began to read in Harold's words. My dear sons, if you are hearing this letter, it means your mother believes you have learned something important about love and family. I changed my will not because I stopped loving you, but because I loved you too much to let you become men without honor. Terrell started crying then. Not angry crying, but the kind of crying that comes from deep inside, when you realize you've made a terrible mistake. I have watched you treat your mother poorly during my illness, the lawyer continued reading. I have seen you make plans for my money while I was still breathing. I have watched you push away the woman who gave you life, who raised you with love and sacrifice. Marcus was crying now too. Dad, I'm sorry, he whispered to the air, like Harold could hear him, but the letter wasn't finished yet. However, Mr. Davidson read, I also know that you are good men underneath all that greed and selfishness. You are the sons your mother and I raised with love, and love can teach what anger cannot. I sat back down and looked at my boys. Your father's will has a condition you haven't heard yet. Everyone in the room went still. If both of my sons apologize sincerely to their mother, Mr. Davidson read from a new page, and if they show her the respect and love she deserves for a period of 1 year, then the inheritance will be split 3 ways. 1/3 to Helen, 1/3 to Marcus, and 1/3 to Terrell. Marcus looked up with tears streaming down his face. You mean we can still inherit? But only if you prove you've learned what family really means, I said. Only if you show me that the sweet little boys I raised are still inside the men you've become. Destiny spoke up for the first time in a while. What kind of respect are we talking about? I had thought about this for days, ever since Harold and I planned this together during his last week alive. It means including me in family decisions, I said. It means letting me be a grandmother to my grandchildren. It means treating me like someone who matters, not just when you want something. And if we do all that, Terrell asked, wiping his eyes, we'll get our inheritance after a year? There's more, I said with a small smile. There's something else your father wanted you to know. I reached into my purse one last time and pulled out a bank statement. It was for an account that only Harold and I knew about. An account we had been putting money into for 30 years. I handed the statement to Mr. Davidson. When he saw the number at the bottom, his eyes went wide. How much is it? Marcus asked. Your parents have been saving money in a separate account for 3 decades, Mr. Davidson said slowly. The current balance is $2.8 million. Both my sons gasped. Even their wives looked shocked. Your father and I saved every extra penny we made, I explained. We lived simply so we could leave our children a good life. But we wanted to make sure our children were good people first. So the inheritance isn't just the house and the life insurance? Aaliyah asked. No, I said. It's almost $3 million, plus the house, plus my half of the business if you prove yourselves worthy. The room was quiet for a long moment while everyone absorbed this information. Then Marcus stood up and walked over to me. Mom, he said, his voice shaking, I am so sorry. I forgot who raised me. I forgot what you taught me about kindness and respect. He knelt down next to my chair, just like he used to do when he was little and had done something wrong. Can you forgive me? He asked. Before I could answer, Terrell was kneeling next to him. Me too, Mom, he said. I was so worried about money that I forgot about love. I forgot that you're the most important person in our lives. I looked down at my two grown sons, kneeling beside my chair like children asking for forgiveness. These were the boys I had raised, the ones who used to tell me they loved me every night before bed. "Of course I forgive you," I said, putting my hands on their heads. "You're my babies. I'll always love you, no matter what." But then I looked at their wives, who were still sitting in their chairs, not saying anything. "However," I continued, "this isn't just about you two. Your wives are part of this family too, and they need to understand what respect means." Destiny and Aaliyah looked at each other, then at me. "Mrs. Washington," Destiny said slowly, "I'm sorry too. I let money make me forget my manners. I forgot that you're the reason I have such a good husband." Aaliyah nodded. "And I'm sorry for going along with keeping you away from the funeral. That was wrong, and I knew it was wrong when we did it." I smiled at them both. These were good women who had just gotten confused about what mattered most. "The year starts now," I said to everyone in the room. 1 year to prove that this family can love each other the way Harold and I always dreamed. Marcus and Terrell stood up and hugged me tight, the way they used to when they were little boys. "We won't let you down, Mom," Marcus promised. "We'll make Dad proud," Terrell added. As we all walked out of that lawyer's office together, I thought about Harold and how proud he would be. His plan had worked. His sons had remembered how to be kind, how to be respectful, how to be the men we raised them to be. But most importantly, they had remembered how to be family. The next week, Marcus and Terrell came to my house for Sunday dinner, just like they used to do before Harold got sick. They brought their wives and my precious grandchildren. Little Jasmine helped me make cornbread, and Trevor set the table without being asked. During dinner, Marcus looked at me and said, "Mom, we want you to come back to work at the business. As the owner, you should have a say in how things are run. And we want you to move in with one of us," Terrell added. "You shouldn't be living alone in that big house." I smiled and shook my head. I'm not ready to give up my independence yet. "But I appreciate you asking nicely instead of just making plans for me." That's when I knew Harold's plan had really worked. My boys were asking instead of demanding. They were including me instead of pushing me aside. Over the next few months, we rebuilt our family slowly but surely. Marcus started calling me every morning to check on me. Terrell began bringing the grandchildren over every weekend. Their wives invited me to go shopping and included me in their book club. Most importantly, they started listening when I talked, instead of just waiting for their turn to speak. As the 1-year mark approached, I realized something wonderful. I didn't care about the money anymore. Having my family back, having my sons treat me with love and respect, was worth more than any inheritance. But Harold's plan had one more surprise in store. On the anniversary of that day in the lawyer's office, I called Marcus and Terrell to my house. I had an announcement to make. "Boys," I said as we sat in the living room where I had raised them, "you've proven to me this year that you remember what love means. You've shown me the respect and kindness that your father and I tried to teach you." They both smiled, probably thinking about the inheritance they had earned. "But," I continued, "I've decided to change the plan a little bit." Their faces went worried. "Instead of splitting the money 3 ways," I said, "I'm giving it all to you. All of it. The house, the savings, everything. Marcus shook his head. Mom, no. You earned that money too. You deserve to keep it. I have everything I need, I said, looking around the room at my family. I have my sons back. I have my grandchildren. I have daughters-in-law who treat me with kindness. What more could an old woman want? But then I smiled and pulled out one more document. However, I said, there is one condition. They looked at each other nervously. You have to promise me that you'll teach your children the same lessons you learned this year. Teach them that kindness matters more than money. Teach them that family comes first. Teach them to respect their elders and love each other. We promise, Mom, they said together. And as I watched my grandbabies playing on the floor where their fathers used to play, I knew that Harold's plan had worked perfectly. He had saved our family by teaching everyone what really mattered: love, respect, kindness, family. Those are the only inheritances that truly last forever. Did you enjoy my story? Which city are you listening from? Let's connect in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks. It helps me keep bringing you more stories like this. Thank you so much for your kind support. I look forward to reading your comments about the story. On the screen, you'll see 2 new life stories I highly recommend, and there's plenty more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. And I'll see you in the next life story. With love and respect.